when you surround yourself with those type individuals, you start vibrating at their frequency. And that's a beautiful thing. So it's like, you want to start thinking in a way, you're going to start attracting different people.
Yeah.
You start thinking higher, you're going to attract higher. You start thinking in a way for your horse, you're going to start attracting that for your horse. Because remember, you attract what you become. That's it.
Yeah.
There are healers on this planet with the power to soften the suffering of mankind, yet they have remained in the recesses of the world, abused, discarded, and labeled as trash. This is The Touch of a Mustang. I am your host, Shalise Clough, and I'm here to tell the story of wild horses, Mustangs, and the humans who are discovering and sharing their gifts while working to protect their well-being and preserve their spirit, so this divine power won't be lost. Join us on this quest with the Wild Mustang.
Tell us what you've been up to and your trip and how all that came about, all the stuff.
Okay. So not too long ago, it was a cold day. My wife was out of town. She went out of town, and I'm here at the farm, and I came in the office, and I got to thinking to myself, like, what does the world need? What better things can we provide the world, especially in horsemanship? And I got to thinking about, all the things that I've done to lead up to this very moment, even this very moment, but to that very moment. And I realized something was going on. I noticed that people had stopped being able to imagine or visualize things like when we were kids. Remember how we could just visualize something and we'd go do it? We knew what we wanted, and I want to go do this. I'm going to go do that. I want to ride my bike over to my friend's house and just jump on your bike and take off. All of those things that we had got to do. Horsemanship allows us to kind of play with that again. It's like I imagine doing this with my horse, and then have those thoughts, make a decision or a choice, and then you follow the sequence of things to make it happen. So those sequence of things, have a thought, make a decision, take action, and then manifest it into reality. So I'm sitting here in the office, and I'm like, what can I do to really immerse myself into it, the experience, to share it with others? So I just wrote down on notebook paper what I wanted. I wanted to go to an exotic place. I wanted to take my bitless bridle. I wanted to introduce myself to a horse I'd never met. I want to create a relationship, ask them to carry me, and do some things, experience something new. And as I'm creating this, it started to really get me enthusiastic about it. So it's like a thought and then an emotion of enthusiasm, like, oh yeah, I can actually see this forming. I can actually feel the plane taking off to take me to where I'm going. I can actually feel the landing. I can see the ocean. I can see the mountains. I want to go do this. So I just got to thinking, like, where can I go? Where is that place? And then the U.S. Virgin Islands came into my thought. Yeah, let's go check that out. So I started doing
Had you been there before or anything? Or what made you think of that?
No. Well, I've been wanting to go there for a long time because I went on a cruise and we were supposed to go there, but a hurricane hit and they diverted us to the Cayman Islands. So I was like, man, I still kind of have this thought of going to the Virgin Islands. But I always transmuted that thought pretty quickly because I didn't think there'd be horses there. I was like, I don't know if there's horses there. So I just kind of let it pass. But when I started really getting serious about this thought and then making a decision of where to go, I did a quick Google search, horseback riding in the Virgin Islands. And the first one to pop up was in St. Croix. And I thought, wow, I'm going to just shoot them an email and I'm going to write down everything that I have planned. And what's the worst that could happen, right? They say no. Well, they responded back with yes,
nice.
and yes.
Yeah, I bet they were excited.
And then I sat up in my seat and I got real serious. I'm like, I'm going to make this happen. So I just started formulating a plan. The purpose was to immerse myself into an imagination or a visualization that I had. And the next thing was to make a decision. Yeah, I'm going to do it. And then really drill down on focusing my intentions on creating it and then taking action to do it. You got to essentially buy a plane ticket, scheduling, all that. So as a few correspondence with email, I started to really transform, and my idea of what I wanted to do became even better. The dates that I had planned to go didn't really coincide with the dates that I actually went because they came back with, hey, we're doing a leadership class for some middle school students. Would you want to teach the class? Horsemanship. I said, yes, of course I do. So long story short, I flew out there and I taught a leadership class to middle school kids through horsemanship and what I teach here at American Mustang School. And then we formed a idea, a plan to come back and teach a 3-day immersion, a horsemanship adventure clinic. So that's going to happen in June 10th, 11th, and 12th. If anybody's interested, go to my website, sign up, meet me there.
Looks amazing. There's lots of videos and things on all your places to kind of check it out.
Yeah. And thank you for your help on it too. But the beautiful thing about this is it's something that's accessible now. Because for about 3.5 years, I had to kind of keep what I was doing quiet. And now I can actually talk about it. I was teaching life coaching through horsemanship, the sacred art of horsemanship, to special operations forces in the military. And that's quiet. You can't publicize any of that. A lot of these guys, they don't even exist. So just touching on that, it's transferred into, okay, now I'm going to start doing more for the public and sharing this on I hope, a global scale. So the first little test was go out of the country, which is kind of not out of the country, it's still America. But it's like go out of the country and take this. But what was really cool is other people came one girl was from Italy. So she came and got to learn American Mustang School, horsemanship. And it was pretty cool. And that kind of leads into what we could talk about in this podcast, all of the neat things that have been transpiring through teaching the sacred art of horsemanship.
Yeah, I think it's cool. One thing that stood out to me is like you had this thought and then you wrote it down. I think, we have all these thoughts go through our mind, and it's interesting the ones that materialize because of how we react to them, and kind of like what you said, what we imagine is possible versus, how are you going to do that? So to go from a thought to reality, it's cool.
Yeah, and horsemanship is the best accountability partner that I've ever had in creating myself, an understanding and awareness in myself, and then seeing it through, like on a microcosm or a daily practice. So horsemanship has changed so much for me since the day I started. It's actually like a daily reset ritual that I go through. And we talked about seasons, cycles. I teach some really cool stuff in horsemanship and Hermetic principles. Touched on this with you in the past, but those Hermetic principles are really, really interesting because they spill over into every area of our life. So in teaching or understanding that, you can look at how things correspond, how they work together. And it's almost like this. The horse is exactly like us in every way, except one that I found so far. And that's our ability to visualize and imagine possibilities or opportunities to learn and grow, which essentially brings us back to the horse. Because you got to kind of imagine a guy was sitting there watching a horse walk across the field one day and said, man, I imagine myself riding on a horse. Well, our imagination is what brings us into relationship with the horse. And then it's limitless at that point. You look at things that, what is limitation? Limitation is form. This body I have, the horse's body, that's a form, and it's limited to that form. Otherwise, a big giant horse just keeps growing and never stops. Or a big giant person just keeps growing and never stops. So there's limitation there. But as far as our mental and spiritual plane of existence, it's limitless.
Yeah.
We literally can think into existence. So it's like whatever we think about, we bring about. Same with the horse. I get into conversations with people and they'll ask, well, what's the benefit to the horse? And that's the beauty of horsemanship. A horse, especially our wild Mustang horses, they can stay out on the pasture, on the rangeland. They can eat, they can poop, they can procreate, they can play, they can vibrate at frequencies, they can watch the sun come up, sun come down, they can do all those things. Well, properly invitation into the human element, they can gain a conscious awareness that they wouldn't otherwise gain. So that's the benefit. They can actually feel feelings they hadn't felt, think thoughts they hadn't thought. They can help people do it too, because it's almost like we're the same. We're just different class. We're a class of people, they're a class of horse, but thoughts and emotions transfer back and forth. Attitude and action transfers back and forth. So we're essentially the same. The only difference is that imagination piece that I've found so far, but that's the actual thing that brings us together. So it's not a separation. It's just an awareness of. Imagine it, think it, do it, become, form habits, create a character. So if we have a wild Mustang horse that's been labeled untrainable, we can actually use these principles and understandings to align ourselves, present to the horse correctly, to where they can understand and align into a character that we imagine. So it's really cool. If I think calm, quiet thinking thoughts and I present that to my horse, of course they're going to have calm, quiet thinking thoughts. Well, if they're creating a habit of that, they're forming a character of that. So that's one little aspect. Horses, we get to go inward of ourselves, present outward to them. They're mirroring back to us in feedback, which causes a feedback loop to where we can make subtle or obvious changes in ourselves and our thoughts and our emotions and our attitude meaning posture, how we posture to the horse, and then our actions, and then observe feedback, make changes, do it again, get into a feedback loop. And that's in a microcosm. So we start connecting our thoughts and emotions and our actions. They do it too. So that's what I wanted to kind of like drill down on and let people know, like, hey, horsemanship, it's not what you've been told. It's not what traditional practices teach. Horsemanship it's basically a daily reset ritual that you can go in and recalibrate yourself and then get in alignment to where you can attract what it is you desire or imagine or visualize. So chasing a wild horse, what is that going to get us? We're just going to chase it. We're going to run.
Pretty tired.
Yeah, it's called energy conservation. You will run out of energy because they can outrun you. They run so fast. So what do we have to do? We have to attract them to us. Well, how do we do that? We start aligning ourselves to become attractive. And it's like that in anything. So if we talk about 5 main areas of our lives, we got health. You start attracting health. You don't go chase it. You start making decisions, have a thought, make a decision or a choice, take action, eat the right stuff. And then your future is changed by doing that. You become healthy or unhealthy. Pretty simple. Yeah. Go into wealth, finances, same thing. Go into happiness. What do you find joy in? What do you not find joy in? There's your happiness. Then you go into relationships. And it's in this order is pretty important because forming a relationship with a horse, you pretty much got to have your stuff in alignment, like your health, and your wealth and your happiness, because nobody's going to want to join up with you if you don't have those 3 things in order. Then the relationship can form, and then you go into spirituality. And that's a really, really beautiful piece there. But those 5 main areas, most people haven't even identified those areas. And they're taking all this entropy or chaos, disorder to the horse and asking them, fix me. And it's like, well, wait, you've got to go inward and find out some information about yourself first, which the horse can help with.
For sure.
And then make these subtle, necessary changes each day. And then over the time, you can create whatever it is you imagine. It's a pretty cool process, and it's a system. It's an interactive system. We've talked about that before. But a person, they kind of have to have an understanding of these principles, these 7 Hermetic principles. And I've been teaching those in my coaching, and I can run them.
Tell us, what do you mean exactly when you say Hermetic?
Well, Hermetic is sealed. It's like information that's available, or it's not that it's a secret. It's just that not everybody knows about it. It's sealed, and they have to be discovered. It's like what a horse possesses inside. They got information inside that they'll reveal to you if you ask for it correctly. It's not taken, it's not forced, it's revealed. You know, when the student's ready, the master appears. So when the student of the horse is ready, the horse will reveal information. Hermetic principles are that way too. The very first one says the universe, or the all is mind, the universe is mental. What that really means is what you think about, you bring about.
That's super true.
And that is so true.
We definitely create our world by the way we either see it with limits, which I would say is probably more common, or whether we see it limitless, or maybe a little bit of both, you know?
That's right. Because, you know, as we go through these principles, it'll start to paint a really easy to see picture. So you go into the second one, it's correspondence. And that's basically how things work together. And as above, so below. As within, so without. So if we look at something simple as above, so below. In the macro, we got the solar system and planets. The same energy that form those is the same energy that form the atoms in our body. And they mimic each other. They do a lot of the same things. And without sidestepping off too deep into that, you look at what you think and you feel. As above, so below. As within, what you're thinking, as without. So what a horse thinks, he presents in nonverbal communication of action. He actually presents it in attitude, which is a posture. Horse can communicate nonverbally in just a simple posture to another horse, and it's well received. Yeah. No big deal. I mean, I have 8 horses that communicate all the time with subtle little gestures of just a simple posture change. So do humans. There's information oozing out of humans.
We just ignore a lot of it.
Non-verbally. Yeah. Well, I mean, I taught a class this morning and a soldier was playing with one of my horses. And as it's unfolding, I'm explaining, like, he's telling us so much information off of his nonverbal communication. Something simple as a tension release in the mouth. Most horse people would understand what that is. But there's so many more. I mean, when we understand this next one or some of these next principles that I'll talk about, rhythm, it's like a horse will breathe in a certain rhythm. Then the human gets involved. The breathing rhythm changes. And then if a person's not aware of that, they're kind of at a disadvantage. If they become aware of that, they'll notice their own breathing. Then they'll notice the horse's breathing. Then they can trigger body responses through action to change an internal breathing, which the brain monitors body system. And then you see this other feedback loop form. And then it's not linear. So then there's another one, your heart rate. It's vibrational frequency. That's another Hermetic principle. Heart rate beating at a certain beat per minute. Horse can hear your heart rate 3 to 4 feet away, especially when you're on their back. So all of this information is transferring in these energies. So whenever a person learns these principles and they live in accordance with them, they're the principles that govern nature, the heavens and the earth, as above, so below. The horse abides in those. So if we're going to develop a clear-cut relationship, we have to know them. We have to abide in them too and attract the horse to us because he feels it. He understands it. He lives in it. And he realizes, wow, you're coming into this understanding much deeper and wider than traditional training practices would teach. So we'll go to the third Hermetic principle, which is vibration. And that's kind of what we were talking about. And I'm not so sure that these are necessarily need to be understood in order, but it's probably a good thing to look at them in order. And if I get them out of order, sorry.
That's all right. I don't know. I might have to look them up,
Yeah, I encourage everybody to look them up. It's valuable. And then we look at vibration. And everything's in motion, and a horse is standing there vibrating. We are vibrating. Those are energies. And if we think in energy and vibration and frequency, we can really understand horsemanship on a deeper, wider level. Because if I'm vibrating at a certain level, and then I'm not aware of it, and I go get in the presence of a horse, and they're giving me feedback that doesn't make any sense, I can actually go inward, change my thoughts, my emotions, my attitude, my action, present again, and observe an instant change in the horse through feedback. And then wash, rinse, repeat that. We have a feedback loop. Then we understand polarity, degrees of something. And the best way to understand that is kind of like contrast, or you look at different classes of things like temperature, hot and cold. The same exact thing, just different degrees. That's what nature is. So in like vibration, if a person's happy or angry, it's the same thing. It's just different degree, same energy. I mean, I've done things out of anger and got a productive result. I've done things out of happiness and done things and got a productive result. And you can look at that as like, wow, that's energy. It's still the same thing. How we use it is controlling it. So in horsemanship, a person aware of their energies, their vibrational frequencies and what they're presenting and observing and making changes and doing it again, they can create this harmony and energy transfer. And it's the unseen, and a lot of times. But I heard it explained like this the other day, energy, like a tornado. It's energy and it's spinning, but you wouldn't see it unless it had like dirt and dust in it, but it's still there. So take all the dirt and dust out of it, it's still happening. They're even saying that in our atoms that happens. There's a tornado vortex that happens on a cellular level. I don't know too much about that, but I thought that was really interesting. But the only way to see it is it's got to add color to it, to visually light frequency see it, but it's there. So then they talk about electromagnetic energy. Your heart's put off, our brain's put off. Horses, people, there's electromagnetic energy communicating unseen between person and human. But see, there's no way to, in the five senses, like through eyes, see it. It has to be felt. There are receptors in the body, sensory receptors in our body to pick up on it. I mean, we could make 50 podcasts on all these different topics, but the horses are the best accountability partner for this understanding because a person can actually experience it through interaction with the horse.
It's interesting because I think a lot of it goes back to awareness, and so much of it I think we're not aware of because we rely so heavily on what we can see with our eyes or what we can hear through our conversations. And we don't really, you kind of talked about like Phil, like your felt perception. We don't really talk about that or teach that at all. It's not really a part of our
Yeah.
culture very much.
Yeah, and that's where I go into spirituality piece with horsemanship. So I call this sacred art of horsemanship because I think of it as a painting, art, and sacred being set apart. So a set apart practice of self-study, self-discovery, self-mastery with a horse as an accountability partner. So essentially the horse and I are painting a picture each time we're engaging. And this picture starts to take form. It has limitations, but it's a form that I can start to see a picture. Well, maybe it's mental, but it's also physical, and we could go into that. But think of it in terms of you're creating a relationship with a horse to identify the unknowns. I'm going inward into myself. I observe me, present to my horse, observe feedback from my horse, make necessary changes and do it again to create this feedback loop or this painting. And each time that we interact, more brush strokes, more color, more visuals start to come into play where it's understood. So it's like if I explain this to you over a podcast, you'll get a sense of it. But until you go actually do it, you wouldn't get an understanding. When the sense and understanding come together, you get the true essence of whatever it is you're doing. So in this case, horsemanship, and discovering through an accountability partner, the horse, all these energies that I can control, thought, energy, emotional energy, physical, and then we go into spiritual. And what that means for me and for what I share in horsemanship is when you don't have the answers through the five senses, you don't have them. And you don't know, or actually you do know enough not to go outside of yourself to get the answers. You go within, and that's on that spiritual plane of existence to where you tap into collective consciousness where the information's stored and you pull it or attract it to you. And then you get the answer. And then you start transitioning through three planes of existence that there's actually more, but we'll just focus on three. The physical plane, the mental plane, and then the spiritual plane. And when you can seamlessly transition through those three planes of existence, creating whatever it is you want to create, when you imagine and visualize and then create it into existence, that's how it works. All of the greatest inventors on our planet, the guy that thought of the two guys riding a bicycle thought of an airplane. 1903, they flew the first airplane. That was imagination, visualization.
Yeah. And stuff that a lot of people didn't believe could be done. Like in their reality, it wasn't a possibility.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've seen people do things with horses that a lot of people say that can't be done. And it's like, well, yeah, it can be done. And then we go into those other planes of existence to where autistic children start talking in complete sentences. Can be done. You talk about people that are so depressed that they have nothing to live for and they're actually on the brink of taking themselves out. They get with a horse and then they transition 180 and don't live in that anymore. That's unknown, unseen, not talked about. It's information that transferred energetically to change that person. I've seen it done with horses. The horse is labeled bad. He needs to go to euthanization. And it's like, no, man, we can change his thoughts, change his actions, change his habits, change his character. But we have to imagine what his character could be to present something worthy of him to be.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of going inward and understanding how much power a person actually can wield. And going through these Hermetic principles will explain how it's possible.
Yeah. And I think a key you said is you talked a lot about like subtle changes and also every day. I think those two things, a lot of times we want to take a big leap. And like I just posted a story on my Instagram where it was a ladder with, steps that you go up the ladder compared to a ladder where it's like these huge gaps that you can't get from one to the next. But we kind of, and especially in our culture where we get a lot of things really quickly without very much effort, I think we focus a lot on these big jumps and not so much on these subtle, tiny, everyday, repetitive choices that we make that are actually creating this outcome. And we kind of think, I want an instant fix, or I want this huge change in my life, not realizing it comes so small, like such small steps.
Yeah, there's validity to that. The most unique characteristic in a human that I've discovered in coaching people is consistency. And when a person can be consistent, it doesn't have to be perfect, And that's the beauty of horsemanship. A lot of people want it perfect. And I coach them like, no, it's never
Yeah.
perfect. It's actually beautiful because it's an imperfection. And that's consistency we're after. So it's being constantly willing to change, be consistent, and not fall into a routine that traps us, that creates a habit
Yeah.
of artificial barriers.
Which we have a lot of, probably.
Yeah, and we can rise above that and see it from a whole different plane of existence. Like when you rise up from the physical plane into the mental plane, it's limitless. There's really no form to it. And then you come and bring it into the physical, it starts to have form. That's what the limitations are. But then you come up into the spiritual plane, and then you exceed the physical plane in a lot of ways of what the initial thought was. So in other words, you can look at one thing from 360 degrees of perspective. However, if we don't practice moving off of a certain perspective, we'll never get a different perception. So you got one thing, there's 360 degrees around that one thing to look from. You know, it's like I come from this perspective, and then it's like, wow, I don't see an answer. Well, let me jump over to the shadow side of that and look at it from the other direction. And it's like clear as day. Or maybe it's just a little micro shift of 1 degree, and then keep looking at it, and then it starts to become clear. So people, they get into a routine sometimes, and that is going to inhibit growth.
Yeah.
And if they're unaware of it. So subconsciously, they're doing something daily. That template keeps transferring to the next day, to the next day, to the next day, until they start going inward like this with a horse, practicing what they want to do, which is have the ability to control energies and change reality. And that was the point that I was trying to make when we first started. I teach this. And I was like, you know what? I got to go immerse myself into this and like really get a deeper understanding of this, because I've done this a lot. You know, I manifested a house on vacant land into a reality, but I didn't know then what I know now. So I had to fumble a lot, and I had to go through frustrations, and I had to go through, and which is good. Not saying that anybody that tries anything is not going to struggle, but in life coaching people, I've learned how to show them not to make the same mistakes, to where what took me 10 years could take them 2 years. You know, it's like, yeah, there's definitely knowing about something. When you jump into doing it, you actually know it, and it's much quicker. It's more efficient. It's more effective. So I went out to the Virgin Islands to because you said, you know, sometimes people don't realize it takes a lot of time and it can't be a snap of a finger. And I was like, yeah, there's validity to that. However, if you're in total alignment, you can't snap your finger. And it can happen quick. So the very first thought of going to do that, to the time I did it, was like 2 to 3 weeks. And it's fast. And it's like, okay, and how did the stars align to make it all work? It's energy. It's people vibrating at the same frequency you are to come together, to create.
Do you think, though, that was an accumulation of a lot of little steps leading up to it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's almost like,
absolutely,
you know, we can make these little steps, and then as we get to a different point, we start to maybe see all the results come really quickly as we've aligned our life.
Yeah, it's like overnight successes. Most of the ones that I know, they say, yeah, it took me 30 years to get an overnight success. It took me 15 years to get an overnight success. I think of it this way in my scenario, I guess we call it, my experience. I'm a complex person, so I'm always doing a bunch of different things at once. And it's like the accumulation thing. Yeah, I invested 2 decades in horsemanship, but also did 2 decades in, you know, investing and finance. And then I invested 2 decades in learning how to build homes and creating a farm. And then I invested, you know, so it's all these little coming togethers, so to speak, to where there's one day it's like this explosion where you realize, my gosh, man, the mind is so powerful. And then what is the purpose? What is our purpose to come to this planet? I'll speak for myself. I start to realize, well, my purpose is to take anything that is in disorder and put it in order. And then within myself, and then anything that I have access to. And then the most successful people that I look at, that's what they do. And they continue to do it. And they do it again in any area of their life, in their health, in their wealth, in their happiness, in their relationships, in their spirituality. And it's like, oh man, this gets real. And then when you come across information, like when the student's ready, the master appears. Have you heard that? That's a real thing. And I've found the horses, that's a prime example. I would like to know how many horses I've gotten the pleasure to play with, but if I had to guess, we're way up into the thousands. And then I look back on those experiences and realize, oh my gosh, I wouldn't have been ready for this particular horse had I not had all those particular horses. And then I wouldn't have been ready for that horse way back then, but each one prepared me for the next. And this particular one prepared me for this particular one. So it's like when the student's ready, the master appears scenario. And then you realize, oh, wow, this is deep and wide. Then these Hermetic principles show up one day. And it's kind of quite an interesting story. But I wanted to try to relay to people what I'm experiencing. You know, and when I lived in Colorado in the mountains, 8 years without a cell phone, taking thousands of people trail riding on my own horses, discovering through experience these principles that I'm speaking of today in coaching. So it's like the transition from the actual student of the horse in nature. Now, how do I bring all that into the human element and explain it to a human where they can understand it and get efficient, effective at horsemanship?
Yeah.
So then these Hermetic principles show up. And it's like, yeah, this is exactly what I learned. This is exactly not even any different. So we go into these next principles of rhythm. So we talked about, vibration, polarity, now rhythm. There's a rhythm to things. There's a rhythm to everything. The ocean comes in with waves, goes out with waves. When I teach my 5-part series with horses, there's a rhythm getting established. How fast is this horse walking? How slow is he walking?
Yeah.
How high is his head? How low is his head?
And probably that rhythm can be for good or bad, right? Don't you think we can establish kind of an erratic, maybe not erratic, but I was just thinking, you were talking about like heartbeat and how our thoughts can influence our heartbeat, where it's like we're calm and collected, or we're thinking really scared, nervous thoughts. And so our heart's beating up. And depending on that changes our interactions with our horse, whether it's more high strung, not even erratic, because I think it feeds off each other. So it's like it is coming from somewhere. So it's not just out of the blue, versus maybe how that rhythm, and I don't know, tell me if I'm anywhere on what you were thinking, but we go in there calm and collected. I'm like, that changes the relationship, our interactions with the horse, the feedback that's going back and forth.
Yes. We haven't got to cause and effect in the principles, but that's what basically we're going to talk about, how that works. If I am a cause and I'm presenting cause to the horse for an effect, now there's so many, but we'll just keep it kind of simple. If I go in there and I've groomed for mindset in our level 1, where I go inward and I ask myself, what have I been thinking about in the last 12 hours? What have I been thinking about in the last 24 hours, a few days, last week, last month, last year? If we've been doing that, we've been painting a pretty good picture, so we can do it really quick. We can go in and go, yeah, I've been kind of mentally stressed because it's tax time, as an example. Well, then I'm feeling constricted in the heart, so my emotion is a little maybe frustrated. And then my posture is not presenting something that a horse would be worthy to or willing to want to join up. And then my actions are probably rigid and bracing and out of time and too much pressure, not enough pressure. And I'm just not aware. Yeah. But if I go inward and I assess those 4 things that I can control, my thoughts, my emotions, internal pathway of communication with the horse, they share the same things, thought and emotion, outward pathway of communication, attitude, which is posturing, and action, which is actually doing. So when I'm aware of those things and I go into the presence of a horse and I'm going to present the cause, me as the cause, energy transfer, information, and then I observe the feedback from the horse and I correct it fast and present again for the most desirable outcomes. Yeah, it's definitely going to have an effect. And we could give it a value judgment of good or bad, but it's more of understanding these principles of polarity. Am I pegged out over here, or am I pegged out over here, or am I pretty centered? And that's where we got to answer the question for ourselves. Different people are going to have different relationships with different horses. Yeah. Horses will adapt to different people. Different people will adapt to different horses. The ability to do that is controlling energy transfer. That's it. Whenever you can develop the 6th sense that I speak of, which is above our 5 senses, then you can know, like, no horse is ever going to throw my control off, and I'm never going to throw theirs off. It's going to be harmonizing or agreeing. So it's when 2 beings come together, moving at a vibrational frequency. If one's up here and one's down here, one either has to come down or one has to come up, or they got to meet in the middle. And it's a matter of let's get going. Let's have a visualization. Let's have an imagination. Let's think. Let's make a decision or a choice. Let's focus with intention. Let's go through action. And then we see the outcome. And then we get feedback and we make necessary changes, present again. And then you start harmonizing those energies. So if one's real high, one's real low, or they're both off the charts real high, we can actually bring us both down. And then that starts to find where our balance is. Because I just did a differential class where I took 2 different horses that are my horses. I know them very well. And I took pictures of this. We had a freshly groomed arena. So the circles, one's really tight around the human and one was really big around the human. 2 different horses, 2 different energies, 2 different energy transfers. But that differential is so powerful because this particular individual has gone through, they're at level 3, going into level 4. But sometimes we do some ground things for a differential. You're pretty good with this horse. Now let's add another horse to the equation. So 1 horse ground tied, take this horse, do the 5-part series with, see the energy transfer with this horse, ground tie that one, go over to this one, do this. And then the results in that exercise are so much faster than me standing there teaching and coaching and trying. The horses are the teachers at that point. And the energy transfers are felt and experienced. So they got the sense of it with me explaining it. They got the understanding of it through experiencing it and doing it. They literally merged understanding and sense of together and got the true essence. And the horses are, man, when they figure out that's what you're doing, they step up and reveal things to you or to that person that I could never train the horse to do. It's unseen, it's unknown. That person just went through every sensory receptor in their entire body, through eyes, through hearing, through smell. I mean, you can actually taste it, but it's like touch. So they're pegging off the charts of all these sensory receptors in their body, connecting their thoughts and emotions, their attitude and their action with the horse. And then it gets into a feedback loop. And then they see and feel actual changes taking place based on a thought. And it starts with a thought. And what's really beautiful about what I can't train horses to do is when their thought drifts away, the horse does something subtle or obvious to bring their thoughts back in, then they get right back into the feedback loop. And then when the feedback loop is circular and harmonious and agreement and balance, then they feel it and they know how to keep it there. And then their mind drifts off into something, not a big deal. It's just, we're developing awareness. The horse will do something subtle to bring them back in. My horses will usually stop and look at them. What do you want to do? And then they'll know what to do to continue the rhythm. And then they'll come to a stop exercise that we have, and I'll ask them, when he came to you and questioned, what triggered in your thought right before that happened? And they'll respond usually like, well, I was thinking about what I was going to do next. And it's like, yeah, he noticed that vibrational frequency change in your thought patterns, and you may have non-verbally communicated something. And this is all maybes because I can't really see exactly what's going on. I watch my horses more than I watch my people. But it's like, I watch the horse question, what do you want? And then I go to the person to see like, well, what did they do? But I can't see a nonverbal communication that took place. Maybe the horse did. But I'll ask them. And then it's generally, well, my thoughts of what we were doing went away to what I'm going to do. And then the horse picked up on it. And it's like, see, that's what happens when you're on your back. It's more acute at that point because your rhythms, your breathing rhythm, your heart rate rhythm, your motions, your actions, they're all transferring energy back and forth. Some people are aware of it. Some people aren't. They're not even aware of body awareness. What are my feet doing in conjunction with my hands, my seat, my eyes? That this body that is an input mechanism for the horse, we have to develop awareness to what this hand's doing and this hand's doing and that right foot and that left foot and the seat and my head and my posture, my off center, my on center. All these things start to take into play because the horse is sitting there taking notes on all of it. And you do one subtle change, that's a change in vibrational frequency, it's a change in rhythm, maybe even a change in polarity, cause and effect. They start to understand that. And see, we haven't even gotten up into the energies of masculine, feminine energies, which is law of gender, principle of gender. See, horses are real good at balancing that. Because I get like guys that I already kind of explained, they come in here and they've been operating at a high frequency of masculinity. These are war fighters. So they're going to be doers, builders. They're going to be operating in a masculine energy. Then they've got to balance that, with coming back to their wife or their children or humanity. And it's like if those energies are not even aware of and then they're not balanced, horses are the best at letting them know your energies aren't balanced. And see, people confuse that masculine and feminine energy a lot, but it's two types of energies. They're the same energy, just different degrees. So you got a masculine, feminine energy. They both have to be there to create whatever it is you want. I mean, you can go into the scripture like Adam and Eve. That represents masculine, feminine energy. The child is an understanding, creation of understanding. So it's like when a horse and a human come together and those energies are off, horses will help. I couldn't train them to do this, but they'll help calibrate those unseen internal masculine, feminine energies within the person, because we all possess both. And it's getting to be scientifically proven where the left hemisphere of the brain, the right hemisphere of the brain represent masculine, feminine, intuition, doer, type things. Horses, they pick up on that. It's like, oh, your energies are way off the chart because I'm picking up on this. And maybe it doesn't even come in through action. Like some of these guys come in and they've got arms like pythons. They could rip the face off of a horse if they wanted to, but they're being gentle and kind, but their energy, it's off the charts. And these horses pick up on it. And then I have to do, as a facilitator, I have to do something to change the energy so that they can visually see and feel the change. Generally, what I'll do is put the person in a vulnerable feeling of like, take your shoes off. And we're going to do this with no shoes on. We're going to feel the dirt with our toes. And then it changes the whole perception of like, wow, I could actually get stepped on. And then it's like a little bit of an energy change in masculine, feminine energy. It's toned down, I should say, towards balanced. And then they get to see it, feel it, and understand it. And then the horses come to that. They're like, you did it. You changed. I see, and I can, you're attracting me to you now as a repellent before. So it's a very beautiful thing to understand these Hermetic principles, especially in communication or establishing a relationship with a horse. Because, man, it was almost like I was flying dark for a long time, not understanding them. But in reality, they're there. We're subjected to them whether we're aware of them or not. And being open and willing to change, the horses see that, feel that, they understand it. But then when you add more knowledge to ourselves and what's actually happening, and then through experience, we gain wisdom, and then we can apply that wisdom correctly, efficiently, and effectively to create what we imagine, what we visualize. And through horsemanship, I got a daily reset ritual of doing that. And then now I get to teach that in life coaching other people that have never been exposed to horses in this way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. One thing, I think part of that is being able to communicate it through our words. I think a lot of people who have been with horses kind of like, I understand what you're feeling, but how do we communicate what exactly is happening, which is what it sounds like a lot of the Hermetic principles are, is that ways to describe what's happening. The other thing that really sticks out is how much it's about, you use the word harmony, but I think balance can be tied into the same thing, where when we're out of balance, things are more difficult. And it's like when we are able to achieve that balance, it changes things. And I think that's for sure true of mental health. A lot of that is like something's out of balance. I think that's our body, our mind signaling that to us, like you're not balanced. Something needs to change. That's something like we've at least seen around our place, where that need for balance to be restored. Otherwise, life's really hard without it.
Well, see, looking at Hermetic principles, and we say harmony, that's agreement. This is another word for agreement. Night and day are totally different. They're the same thing, just different degree. So whenever we look at, we say off balance or off center, we can be comforted to know that if this is out of order, it can be put back in order.
Yeah.
So like I'll focus on what I want, not on what I don't want. So if I'm at the top of that scale of like what I don't want, I do not want this horse kicking out at me. I'm aware of that, but I'm also aware of that we're going to dip down into the sine wave frequency to what I do want. So I'm going to focus on that. And that's going to bring what I don't want, what I do want to closer together as we go forward. So it's like, if you look at like a stock market chart where it starts here, and then in 5 years later, you can see how it's been trending. Is it going up? Is it going lateral? Is it going down? But you see all these tiny little ups and downs, ups and downs, ups and downs. That's what horsemanship is. That's what life
that's
is.
what I was going to say. And life, up and down, and hopefully staying, that creates the field we're kind of living on.
Yeah. So then whenever you can realize and align with these principles that govern the heavens and the earth, we align with those and use those to our benefit. That's where you can track where you start doing that. Is it trending up? Is it trending lateral, or is it trending down? And then giving it a value judgment, bad, down, good, up, that's personal preference, but it's not necessarily bad to trend down, because how are you going to learn what not to do to go up? Because if it always just trended up, everything, and we're giving it a value judgment of good, it's always good, it's always good, it's always good, you're never going to have a reference. So like people that say, I'm really struggling with this, it's like, cool, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
You actually can look at it as like, there's going to be a change. And what we can do is think about what we want different from what you're going through, and then take steps toward the change. And we've already talked about the process and procedure and how to do that. And it's interactive. So you got to do it through experience. It's not like, well, I'm going to think about change, but not ever apply the system, because you'll never effectively get it, cause and effect. So people that are struggling, it's like, yeah, look, you're learning what struggle even is. Or when you're not struggling, you learn the struggle you went through. You had to do it to get to the point where you realize you're not struggling. Otherwise, you wouldn't have any contrast. I mean, if everything was daylight all the time, we wouldn't even know what night was.
And I think we also have to hit those dips. We have to go on those downward trends to realize, like, oh, I need to change something. Like, I think in horsemanship, you can see that if you get a big reaction out of your horse, that's not what you wanted. That's a time when it's like, I got to do something different. Like, my horse is doing this. It's not safe for us, or it doesn't feel good or whatever. That's, I think, a time that pushes us to learn. Same thing in life. Like, when we get low enough because what we're doing is not working, that's when we're ready to say, okay, this isn't working. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm ready to do something different. Like, because we're going into that dip.
And see, practicing horsemanship, the sacred art of horsemanship, self-study, you get more efficient and effective at doing that quicker. So your lows aren't as low and your highs aren't as high as far as the surprise, shock, and awe of it. It's going to be like, yeah, I created this happiness. I expect it. I manifested this because I know how to do this. So it's like skill and experience coming together for each challenge. So like in horsemanship, told this to my participant today, I would not have put you with this particular horse day one. As you advance through my horses, this is the time to get the differential so that you can see. I want to set you up for the best success based on your skill and experience for this particular challenge. When a person goes too fast, too soon, and it gets chaotic and disorder, that's an okay thing. That's where they get to say, oh, I need to make some course corrections here and slow down. Maybe they're going too fast, too soon. Slow down, invest some more time, develop the skill, get the experience.
And then that's a huge thing, I think, with Mustangs, is trying to go so fast. And instead of slowing down, being like, wait, hold on a minute. We need to focus on this place right here.
Since you mentioned the Mustangs, because people ask me, why Mustangs? And I used to say this, they taught me the most about myself. Yeah. That's why. But here's more to elaborate on with that. These horses operate in these principles. They understand them. They live in accordance with them. They analyze things life and death. It's that serious to them. They understand contrast. They understand it. And for us to develop a relationship with something vibrating at a frequency of that caliber, we've got to be willing to change to that. If the horse is up here and we're here, we don't want to expect the horse to come down to us. We need to come up to them. And different horses are at different levels. I mean, I have some that were way up here and I'm almost up there, but each time I'm with them, I get to ratchet up a little bit more. Never expect them to come down. So in horsemanship, through traditional training practices, they've actually done a disservice to the Mustang, inviting them into the human element. Well, I should say forcing them into the human element, not inviting. An invitation is totally different than force. I stick with this. There's rules, there's regulations, there's processes and procedures, there's a system, and we never break it. I never force a horse to submit with pain or fear. I'm not going to put restrictions in their mind and tensions in their body to force them to do what it is I have an imagination of doing. So it's a beautiful calibration whenever we can follow rules, go in it with a philosophy as I'm going to trade places with this horse and I'm going to treat them as I'd want to be treated if the roles were reversed. Pretend that each session we're together, they get to do to me what I've been doing to them, whether it be on the mental plane, physical plane, spiritual plane. I want that to harmonize freely. It's called flow. I want it to flow. And whenever a horse is out there and then invited correctly into the human element, that's when their conscious ascension begins, or should. Some people will destroy that. And it's through usually, what's the word? Ignorance. Now, I'll go as far as to say if somebody's being mean intentionally, they're stupid. But if somebody's being kind intentionally, they're smart. That's on that polarity scale. Now, emotions will get involved and they take offense to that and all that, but that's on them, not me.
Yeah.
I'm not responsible for how someone feels based on facts. If you're going to intentionally be mean to this animal, that's stupid. If you're going to intentionally be kind to them, that's smart. And that's where the guideline we want to stay in. It's like, yeah, man, if you don't know that you're doing something is one thing, but if you do know and you don't make a change, a necessary change to correct the behavior, that's wrong. And we can call it right and wrong, good and bad, that type thing. But these principles are how we know. It's like, okay, this horse is vibrating at this frequency. He's calm and quiet. Why would you create the opposite when you have the ability to do it? I've gone to so many, we'll call them demonstrations. I've been invited to assess some people's training practices at different places. And, like horse rescues and all kinds of different places. So I show up and I'm like, really cool. Like, yeah, I want to see how you guys do what you do. And inevitably, they groom the horse. The horse is calm and quiet, relaxed. And then they take him into a round pen with this big, long lunge whip, and they amp him up. And then they invite another participant into the equation and have them do it. And I watch order come into disorder and stay there for an extended period of time, and then get back into order for a limited period of time on the sine wave of frequency. And at the end, I'm asked to evaluate this. And then my simple question is, why would you take a calm, quiet horse and go to the opposite and then insert another person in that doesn't have any skill or experience to handle situation, and then roll through that to where the person comes out of that basically rattled, and then the horse does self-regulate and kind of calibrate down at the ending, and then it's over. And I'm thinking, wow, man, how much of this happens? And then I go place to place and place, and I see that happening more and more. And it's this traditional training practice based on fear. This horse is big and intimidating, and I need to tire them down.
And that's what I was going to ask. Do you think that method is fear-based? Like we have to almost like create the worst case scenario so that it won't possibly happen another time? Yeah.
So I think in terms of frequency now. I used to call it scale of 1 to 10, in which I still refer to that. So I'm going to apply a pressure to a horse, which is a question. And it's a frequency change is what it is. So I'll start at a 1 or 2, soft, we'll call it. And then increase the intensity of the frequency or the vibration through action to get a desired response. So the horse can learn through differentials of vibrational frequency, which they totally understand. They do it with each other. Well, people that are naive or ignorant of it, they're going to go in at a 10, the very first question. And then the horse responds to the 10. Well, then they keep throwing and 8s and 9s on a scale of 1 to 10. They keep throwing those high energies at them, and they keep responding until they get tired. And a horse knows how to regulate energy. They're masters at it. So energy conservation, the law of energy conservation, they know how to do it. They've done it for millennium. They've got into the habit of conserving energy for the most efficient and effective way to sustain survival, especially a Mustang. So it's like, okay, you're going to go try to use these laws of nature against the horse. When he's the master at the laws of nature, he's going to use them against you. So it's cause and effect at that point. It's present what you expect. So if you expect this horse to respond to this high energy, high frequency, and then submit to you through that, that's an unrealistic expectation based on experience. But it's unrealistic because you're using the very thing you don't want to get what you don't want. And it's like, focus on what you do want. If you want a calm, quiet thinking horse, present calm, quiet thinking to him. Increase the intensity to get different results. So in other words, if I want a horse to walk and he's trotting, that's so fine. We're up at that disorder part where it's like, well, I'm asking him to walk, but he's trotting. But I know it won't last long because they'll self-regulate and they'll come back down to a walk naturally. And then when they do that, then I will release pressure as a sign of, oh, thank you. Or maybe I'll do a direction change to use their own energy, not necessarily against them, but it's harder for a horse to do 5 laps. It's harder for them to do a lap direction change than it is to just sit there and go on 5 laps. So we look at this energy, right? They're burning energy running in 5 laps. Well, if I just ask them calmly, quietly to change direction, it takes a lot of energy for them to take their 1,000 pounds going this way, redirect it, go the other way. And then I may just subtly do that again, and then do it again, and then do it again. And then they walk, and then I release it. And then they look at me like, oh, you just wanted me to walk? And then I release as a thank you. Yeah, that's it. That's all I needed. And then we just change thoughts, emotions, attitude, action in the horse to where anytime I ask them a question, they're going to go to a walk. Now I can change the intensity of the vibrational frequency to go up to a trot anytime I want. I already know that because he did that the very first time. So I know it's available, but it's like through thoughts, thinking, through action, doing, over time, becoming, forming habits, creating a character. So then I have a horse that he wants to walk when I ask him to walk. He wants to trot when I ask him to trot. He wants to gallop when I ask him to gallop. And he knows the difference between those. His thoughts don't change into erratic and chaotic reactions. They're calm, quiet responses. So then we're operating in harmony, which is an agreement, because I've abided in those laws or those principles of nature that he abides in. And then we can communicate efficiently, effectively for a long-term sustainable relationship to where no restriction gets put in the horse of confusion, doubt, fear, anxiety, depression. I mean, all of those same things show up in horses. Anybody that's been around them long enough knows that those same characteristics are there. And then we can have a horse that's open and willing. He's in a curiosity and a confidence mindset. His body's not in tension. Yeah. He doesn't get ulcers. He doesn't get kissing spine. He doesn't get all this stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I've been running the same horses for quite a few years. None of them have any of these issues. We don't put horseshoes on them. We've been running 2 decades, no horseshoes. Colorado Rockies for 13 years, no horseshoes. No restrictions on anything.
How do you...
And we could go all into all these little capillary things of that. But it's like if I really want to align with what the horse knows and understands is in alignment with, I got to be least interruptive to that natural design.
How do you think that plays out the other way? Because I would say being too harsh is a fear-based reaction. And then I also think if you're not, I don't necessarily want to say soft, but if you never have any expectations of the horse, that can also be detrimental. But I also think that's based on fear also.
Both of those are the same thing, different degrees. So if a person is in fear and they're being too soft, timid, shy, apprehensive.
Or even, and I would say sometimes they would say that they're being kind, they're following the horse's lead or doing, not really having expectations of the horse, just kind of letting the horse do whatever they want, maybe relating it to boundaries, where it's, how does that?
Yeah, I mean, and it's personal preference at some points, but it's like, if you don't mind, it doesn't matter. Like some people will hand graze their horses. Some people are like, no way. When they're on the lead, I do not let them graze. And it goes into personal preference, but allowing the horse to give feedback is paramount. You have to do it. I'll allow my horses to hand graze sometimes, and then I won't other times, but I know how to communicate what it is that I want. And that comes with skill and experience for each challenge. So if a person's timid, shy, and scared, through experience, they're going to develop confidence, just like a horse. It comes into the human element that's timid, shy, and scared through time, developing skill through experience in each challenge that we present. That there's a formula, of course, that's going to create the character, either in the human or the person. Now, some people jump in feet first into Mustangs. We know that. That's why there's so much.
Oops.
That's why I did a very good living for very many years because of that. But, setting that aside, it's like, coaching is real important. Had I known what I know now, I may have sought out more coaching in those days. I came from a place where we didn't have YouTube. 8 years of no cell phone. And we did have that junky little internet that just sits and spins, so you can't look anything up. Literally, you look something up, go make a sandwich, come back, it's still spinning. It's like, well, I'm not going to sit here and do that. So today, people have a lot more access to coaching. I'm not talking about in-person coaching. I'm talking about I have a YouTube channel. Go watch a YouTube. There's many other people that have YouTube channels. Get some coaching. But to develop the awareness is the purpose of horsemanship. That's like a skill set everybody needs if they're going to interact with a horse, is self-study, awareness, nonverbal communication. What are you doing? Horse is picking up on what you're doing. Even if we're not aware of it, they are.
Yeah.
Even if we're not aware of these principles that I'm speaking of, they are. And it's like, wow, once you start down that pathway and really want to go deeper and wider to discover, it's nothing you will ever watch on a video. You will never get that from a video.
Right.
You just won't. That's why I created the Tropical Island Adventure Clinic, because you can actually get on an airplane, fly over to St. Croix, Virgin Islands, get off the plane, smell the fresh sea air, introduce yourself to a horse. Imagine getting on this horse through an interactive system to get predictable and reliable results. Ride the mountains, go down to the sea, ride the beach, run on the beach, whatever you want to do. We're only limited by the imagination. Swim into the sea with a horse. Go swimming with horses. It is an exhilarating experience. All things tie into it. I'm talking all 5 elements, but we'll focus on 4. Earth, wind, fire, water. It all comes together. It is an interesting experience, and it's something that you can manifest into a reality. And as you're going through the experience, you start connecting the mind, body, spirit complex that we are, but then take something from that away to where when you go back to your own horses or back to your own life and the 5 areas of your life, you have a whole new perspective, and then realize a new perception that exists because it's at a higher frequency. So I explain it like this a lot, Shaylace, to people. Horses can see things that we cannot see. And that's obvious. They can see further, but everything's through frequency. So it's like people can hear different frequencies than other people, higher or lower, bass, treble. You look at it that way. Horses can do that too. They can actually, one of the neat things in the physical body of that horse is he can tip his head sideways and he can see where he's going, where he's coming from in the moment, physically. We can do it mentally. Most people have never really played with it. They're either worrying about the future or dwelling on the past. When you come into this understanding, like you go have an experience that I just immerse myself in so that I can help other people do it and understand it. It's like you can mentally look into your future. You can mentally look into your past right here in this moment, and you can manifest what you want right now. Snap of a finger. It's inner controlling energy. That's all it is. And then when you develop a change in yourself, in character, we'll call it, we'll run down through it, but it's thoughts, thinking something, doing it, action, becoming, forming habits, creating a character. You change your vibrational frequency. I just found out there's 50 trillion cells in our body, and they're born each day. We'll call it born. There's new ones each day. In 7 years, you cycle all of those out, and you're a brand new human.
Crazy.
But you got to think of it in cellular form. It's like this little cell pops in, like, "Hey guys, I'm here," and he's with his other little cell friends, and they're like, "Hey man, life sucks." And he's like, "It does?" He doesn't know. He doesn't have a memory yet. He gets there, and his little cellular friend buddies are like, "Life sucks." Well, what's he going to start thinking? Well, life sucks. So he keeps going. But if you say, "Wait, I want to start thinking different. I want to start feeling different. I want my attitude to be different. I want my actions to be different." Each cell that's born and you thinking that, and this is with horses too. Horses do the same thing. Those new cells come in and go, "Oh, it's a happy life. It's a happy world. We can do this." So you think in time of 7 years, short little period, long for some, short for others, but 7 years, you can change your whole cellular makeup. So if you've been practicing daily, renewing your mind, like I say, it's a daily reset ritual with horses. I go play with horses. That's not the same horse. I'm not the same person. We're new cells. We're new thinking. We're new feeling. We're new attitude. We're new actions. That painting's getting painted, and it's going to look beautiful. The more we focus on making it look beautiful. So it's like, man, this starts making whole much sense. As above, so below. As within, so without. How things correspond. How they work together. So if we're thinking thoughts and cells are getting regenerated and they're getting a memory, it's just going to be easier and easier and easier to go down that path. And then when we stay centered because of a bad day pops up, it's easier to get back centered because you've been practicing, having great days. You'll notice like people are going through a storm, they're in a storm, and they're coming out of a storm. Or even think about it literally, a storm. It doesn't last forever. It's happening. And then that's the time that I'll look at it and break it down into a day of seasons. So we got spring, summer, fall, winter. Break it down into one day. Your morning is your spring. Your midday is your summer. Your evenings is your fall. And night is your winter. And it's a death. And then you get a rebirth the next day. So you're going to die, you're going to sleep, you're going to literally die in essence. and you're going to have new cells born, and then the spring comes, morning, and you get to go look at it in a different light. And then you get to understand, like, oh, this horse at noon, he's real sleepy. His frequency changed from at morning when he's all amped up and ready to roll. So when you go present yourself, what is your frequency at the time of the day, at the season of the day? Are you better at the spring? Is that the time you should go interact with the horse? Are you not so good at summer? And that's what you got to be aware of. That way, midday, you go and play with a horse and you realize, oh, this is my weak point. I'm actually strengthening it. I don't have to look at it as a bad thing. And then you start getting into this whole clarity of like, oh, wow, as above, so below, as within, so without, corresponding with a horse at the time of the day, season of the year, and then the rhythm of that and the cycles. And then new horses coming in, new horses going out. I mean, and then it starts to really paint this big, big, big picture that goes back to that first principle. The all is mind. The universe is mental. What we think about, we bring about. And it is a beautiful experience to know that you have a sixth sense to go to when all the other five senses are maxed out. I mean, I don't see how this can work. I don't hear anything. My sensory receptors in this physical form, I've maxed out. They're limited, and they're limited for reasons, for good reasons. But then you go into that mental plane of existence, and it's not limited. You can actually think limitlessly. Mm-hmm. And then you go into that spiritual plane, and that's where you get answers you did not have access to before. But you have to get in alignment in the other plane, physical, mental, physical, as above, so below. Get into that to where you can access the spiritual plane. And that's why horses are spiritual animals. And we can do a whole podcast on that. But you look back in history and cave writings, they wrote a horse on the cave writing. He was really substantial or important in their life. And then it goes into, that spiritual plane of harmonizing and getting into nature. And that horse is nature. We're nature. But through programming and conditioning in society, we've been taught we're separate of nature.
Yeah.
And in a sense, we got separated.
There is a big gap probably in most of our lives.
Horse brings us back. And see, it's not a secret, Shaylease. It's just that you look at 330 million people in America, and we only have 1.5 million horse owners, to 2 million. I mean, the numbers vary, but it's like 9 million horses. That's it. Down to 6 million I saw the other day. It's like, whoa, that's interesting. But so 6 to 9 million horses, 330 million people. These hermetic things that you and I get to see, they're sealed. You got to do it to access it. That's all that means. And then it's like, whoa, what a blessing. What accessibility does other people have that we don't have that we do? Then that brings a whole new perspective of like, whoa, anybody that has a Mustang, that's even a smaller little, hermetic, sealed information, because that horse has been operating in nature. Yeah. He is nature. We've got to align with nature, present to nature, harmonize, agree with nature, get balanced. And then the human element is so easy. Like all those 5 areas. So like if I was coaching someone, I'd be like, what do you want? I can just tell you how to get it. You want more money? That's easy. You want better relationships? That's really easy. You want happiness? Well, what do you find joy in? It's really easy to go into the human element when you've been coached and taught by nature. I was looking at a study the other day, Shaylease, and they were like Japanese doctors. You know what they prescribe to people?
I've heard not what we prescribe. Yeah. What was it?
Go bathe in the forest. Like, go immerse yourself in the forest for 3 days. That's what you do. If it's not better, come back and we'll talk about prescribing some medicine. It's like, just get your mental mind, get it help it needs first. And then the other things, they kind of fall away. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
It is interesting. That's definitely what I experienced with horses. Like, they get you back into like a homeostasis with, I think, where you are naturally meant to be outside of this world that's very loud, very in your face, with lots of answers that I think it's pretty clear aren't super effective. People are struggling a lot. So
yeah. I coach people at such high caliber these days. And one of them asked me, these are like multimillionaires. These are people that they know the ropes. And they're like, where were you 10 years ago? That one of them asked me the other day. I was like, well, I wouldn't have been ready to be coaching you. So it's a process, and there's procedures and there's alignments, and then you attract what it is you want. So like I coach some people that are just getting into horses, and they're like, I want to make money with my horses, but these people won't pay. And it's like, well, quit chasing people that won't pay. Start attracting people that
Yeah.
will. Well, how do I do that? Well, you become valuable. That's it. That's the formula. Become valuable. Well, how do I become valuable? Go within. Go within yourself, your own heart. Don't worry about what other people are doing or comparing or thinking about
Mm-hmm.
you. Create in your own mind. Imagine what you want.
Yeah.
Visualize it. Go in with your heart. And if you truly desire
Mm-hmm.
it, do it. And that's your seat of
Mm-hmm.
authenticity. That's where that sits in the emotional, the heart. If you have a thought and it's backed by an emotion of like enthusiasm, you're really
Mm.
unstoppable. And the second that you get distracted by society, what they'll think of you. I mean, I created a bitless bridle. Whoop! I created it because I
Yeah.
wanted it. I wanted it for my horses. I did it out of love and kindness to my horses, so 5,000 different people weren't yanking on their
Yeah.
face with a bit. Then I realized, wow, this little piece of equipment has unlocked other things that I hadn't foreseen when I created it. In other words, I don't put restrictions in the minds of my horses through pain, even though it would be an accident. Some people may pull on a rein harder than they meant to or even aware
Mm-hmm.
of. Well, the horse's mind just went to that. So it'd be like if I'm sitting here talking with you and I ask you a question and I pinch you. It's just a little pain. It's not that big a deal. But how long are we going to have a conversation together until you get frustrated a little bit with me
Yeah.
pinching you? It's just that distraction is all it is. So eliminating a bit out of my horse's mouth freed up any possibility of them getting distracted by a subtle pain or like a spoon banging on our teeth, a bit banging on
Yeah.
their teeth, or you look at my bitless bridle and the harshest bitted bridle you can think of. They're the exact same thing. They're just different
Mm-hmm.
degrees. They're the same
Right.
class, different degree. So it's like how we use that with energy. Because I could put the most harshest bit you ever saw on my horse and I could just ride him with my legs and it wouldn't matter. Don't even touch the
Mm-hmm.
reins, but he's still carrying it. But you see my point is like, how do we eliminate distractions? So that's what cause and effect comes in real good to help people understand time from a cause to an effect. In horsemanship, we get to see it instantaneous. When I pick up a lead rope, already the horse changed in vibrational frequency. He already changed in posture. And when I ask a subtle question and he backs a
Mm.
hoof, that's the cause to the effect. But see, in doing like something like a bitless bridle, here's what I got to see. My cause was to eliminate the possibility of tourists hurting my horses balancing on the reins riding in
Mm-hmm.
Colorado. Well, the effect today, all those years, I could have got distracted in all that time and quit doing it, quit using the bitless bridle, whatever. But it's like, oh, that cause created this effect 10, 15 years later to where I can actually have people ride my horses today and really get the concept of understanding of freeing up restrictions in the mind due to an unnecessary distraction of a bit hurting my horse to distract them from what it is we're really trying to teach them. And then it goes into other things too, but that's just one
Yeah.
example. And maybe that was a shameless plug of my bitless
Hey,
bridle.
it's good. You saw we just tried it on our little Arabian we have here, and she loved it. I think at first she was so surprised, like, what's going on here? But yeah, she
I
loved it.
love that.
So
I love
yeah,
that. And man, I get pictures. I should probably put a collage together one day. I get pictures from all over the world, people buying that bitless bridle, and then the profound peripheral benefits that come from doing
yeah.
it. Like head tossing and all
Hmm.
these, byproducts of a
Well,
bit.
all this communication horses are trying to tell you, and people aren't listening to, and that's like, oh, you're starting to
Yeah,
understand better.
yeah, man. It just goes back to those hermetic principles. Cause and effect, vibrational frequency, rhythm,
Yeah,
gender, masculine, feminine. If I'm going to pick up on a rein on a bitless bridle and ask a horse a question, and then my masculine energy gets a little peaked and I go too aggressive and I don't get creative with my feminine energy, then I don't have a larger margin of error. Actually with a bitless bridle, I do have a larger margin of error. But if I go with a
yeah,
bit that could actually, cause some pain, we won't say it's a horrific bit. It's just horrible. But it's like, yeah, I'm using this to communicate with my horse. But my energies get off and I
mm,
get a little too assertive or aggressive. We could go that far. And then my margin of error just
yeah.
decreased.
Well, and I think you also have to
So then I've
recognize
got,
the horses. I don't know if there's a lot of people have something that'll just like irritate them, or if you have like a shirt on that's just not comfortable and you just keep focusing on it and it just builds that tension. I think can be the same thing with a horse where it's just this continual discomfort where you either kind of zone out, don't listen anymore, or it builds up that tension where it's like, the head shaking and the trying to tell you, like, this doesn't feel good.
Well, it's like cowboy boots and running shoes. Same class, different degree. If I'm going to put my cowboy boots on and go run a mile, it's not going to be as comfortable if I put my running tennis shoes on and go run a mile. So it's like, makes a lot of sense as we start really putting all these principles together and we start communicating in an effective and efficient way that the horse would be used to in nature. They're going to do things for efficient, effective, long-term sustainability and survival. You put a bit in a horse's mouth and ride him for 6 hours straight, or you put a bit less bridle on a horse and ride him for 6 hours straight and see the difference. It's like, just check, see what happens. Now, necessary changes need to be made in accordance with communication, timing, tempo, pressures, releases, all those things. But that's skill and experience developed over that particular challenge over time. And it's just an interesting concept, we could call it, to do those experiments. It's like, let's just see. I've had horses, people will label them, we got to drug them to trim his hooves. It's like, no, we don't. And I'll do this. I'll get these alignments and I'll ground time. And then I just start trimming his hooves and he falls asleep. And then the lady, is videotaping and talking like it's National Geographic. Oh my gosh, it's a whole new animal. But it's just, all I did is tweak those vibrations.
And I think some of that's these rules that are embedded in us that things should be a certain way because we can't consider the possibility yet of there may be being another way or different possibilities that we haven't considered.
Yeah. And it's just a process, an interactive system of thinking differently, imagining. See, when we were kids, we'll circle back to the beginning of this podcast, when we were little kids and we wanted to go ride a bike up that hill, we did it. Uninterrupted playtime. No one there to tell you, oh, you can't do that, or you're going to get hurt. None of that. You went and you did it and you might have got hurt and you figured out how not to go get hurt. That's the game of life. That's the game of life. How to benefit, how to not get hurt.
You will get hurt sometimes.
And that's how you know how to not get hurt. Contrast. That's why we came to Earth, is to learn contrast. And we go into some more spirituality. It's like, why did our soul choose Earth to come to? Why? And it's to learn and grow.
And also, I think going back, sorry, go ahead.
And it's the best way on Earth because there's so many contrasts. Night and day, hot and cold, left and right, up and down, pleasure, pain, love, hate. It's like, what do we really come here to learn? We come to learn here how to love and how to be loved. And the only way that I see is the polar opposite of that is to release judgment. Because if I'm not judging, I'm going to be able to love. That horse, he never judges. He doesn't care if you're black, white, rich, poor, doesn't care. But what does he care about? He cares how much we care. And the only way that we can prove it to him is we got to care about ourselves, present to the horse, observe feedback, make necessary changes to become better, and continue that feedback loop to where the horse realizes what we are about and follows us willingly, not forced. And that is attracting. You'll hear these things, law of attraction, get thrown around a lot. And that's what they're talking about. You attract what you become. The horse follows you because it's a benefit to him because of what you're becoming. It's present, expect. It's like breathing. You breathe in, you breathe out. It's a rhythm. It's breathe in, process it, breathe out. It's information. You take in, you give. So it's a give, receive. Horses are really good at giving, but they've got to receive too. It's a reciprocal feedback loop. It's not one way. A lot of people do horsemanship one way, my way or the highway. I'm going to dominate you. I'm going to throw in information at you, and I don't care what yours is coming back. Do what I say. And it's like, well, that's not going to be long-term sustainable. And there's going to be undesirable results from that. And generally it's bucking, biting, bolting, or kicking. And I've made a lot of money off those type of people. But it's like, I would rather help them never get there. Don't go there. We can calibrate this from the day one this way. None of my horses buck. And it's like, somebody asked me one time, do they buck? I said, well, one of them started out doing that, but I got him from some people that he was doing that. But never with me. He never did it again. And it's like, why? Well, I never showed him how to do it. I never caused an interruption or an obstruction or an aversion in him to create that result, the cause and effect of that. I calibrated his thinking, calibrate his actions, to form habits, to create the character in the horse to where he's like, that's waste of energy. It's not long-term sustainable. It won't work. There's no reason to do it. It'd be like just smashing your hand with a hammer. Why would you do that? The consequence of it. So the horse is like, why would I buck? It's, it's
no motivation.
Energy. Yeah, and I have no desire to do that. It's like, they'll run, no problem. that their thought processes don't change from a walk, trot to a canter. They don't. It's all the same. The same thought energy is there, and then they can sustain and move through that seamlessly. It's not erratic and chaotic. It's in order, and that's the purpose. That's what horsemanship's about. Take something out of order and put it in order. That's what life's about.
Creating that balance and alignment and harmony.
Yeah, I'd like to have some sort of an interactive session with other people, like maybe based on this podcast that they listen to and write in with some specifics, on anything. I've coached so many different people in so many walks of life. I've watched horsemanship transition them from where they wanted to be to where they go. But they were the guide of doing it. They did it. I couldn't do their push-ups for them. The horse couldn't even do their push-ups for them. But it's like, wow, they actually transitioned in one particular area of their life. So I'll just touch on a few that we've already touched on, but like relationships. I've watched horsemanship take a relationship on the brink of divorce and 180 it back into no divorce. And I've seen all different degrees of that. I've seen like 30-year marriages falling apart. Horsemanship comes into play for the male, the man, and then they go back and then they buy a beach house together and they're like high school sweethearts again. And they renewed their whole relationship. And the report back is, man, it's better than it ever was, just from a few simple course corrections that I learned in horsemanship. And I'm like, wow, is that efficient and that effective? I mean, it blows my mind sometimes, but then I see it again and again and again and again. And it's like,
get the same results,
This is something very, very powerful, but not a lot of people know about it. I mean, it's actually not a secret. It's just that very few people have tapped into this on this level and teach it and practice it. And that's what I love about your podcast, that we get to share this with people so that they can dive in
start
on a
exploring
deeper, wider.
Because like you say, it's not something that you can really... You can't experience it virtually. You can't watch someone do it and be like, okay, I get that. I understand that concept. It's something that really has to be felt. And it's such a fractal. Feeling that transition.
The video is a fractal. Yeah. Because horsemanship is vast. It's deep and it's wide. And traditional training practices have really inhibited people's understanding. To access this information.
I think the cool thing about our time now is we have the time and the space to utilize horses in a different way. Like before, they were often a tool, and now it's like we can utilize them for what we need in the world right now, which I think a lot of that is that mental clarity and rebalancing.
Guide us back to nature, where we are nature. When we step away and see, some people were programmed and conditioned to step away, and through ignorance or naive, they stay there. But we can have a choice today. We can say, wait a minute, I want to change my whole life. I want to change the way I think. I want to change the way I feel. I want to change the way I produce. I want to change. And horsemanship is like it's a mantra for me. It's something I can go to and recalibrate. It's like a daily reset ritual. And you can look at it as an interactive system to make necessary changes within to present out for an actual physical manifestation of whatever it is you want.
Yeah. There's something cool about how they give you the space to do that. Being with them kind of puts you in a different plane, so to speak.
Well, it's so not like what society is. We got away from being healthy because we jump in a car and drive everywhere. Well, there's no interaction with a car. I guess we could argue that, it's like, you got to turn the steering wheel or you run into the ditch.
Pretty mindless. Okay. You can also drive from one place to another without even thinking about it,
That subconscious is a very powerful thing, and people that don't understand it, horsemanship will give you a deep understanding of subconscious and conscious awareness. Consciously, you learned how to drive a car to train your subconscious to drive that car when you weren't paying attention. So there is that. But it's such a disconnect whenever you look at the health benefits of being in nature and actually moving and doing with a horse. And then you can go through all areas of the life, it's material things that are going to bring happiness. That's what we've been advertised to through commercialization. And it's like, I don't want that. And it does nothing for me. But how did I know that? I had to go through it to learn it.
What do we speak about when we're talking about wealth? Is it the tangible physical things in front of us, or is it a way that we feel and interact with our world?
Well, it's like the biblical verse of, you store your things up in heaven that a moth can't eat, or that can't rust, or that someone can't break in and steal. Well, if we're talking about, going within, yourself, where it's talked of in the new covenant, where it says the kingdom of our creator is within you. Well, you go within, and then the as above, so below, the heaven, your mind. What do you want to store there? Do you want to store happiness? Do you want to store peace, tranquility, kindness, love? I mean, what do you want to store there? And then the only way a person could steal it is if you give it to them. They can't take it. It's not going to rust. A moth can't eat it. So, you look at these correspondence in these things, these ancient texts, the Bible. It's been around a long time, and it came from a lot of other ancient texts. So it's like, well, if that's been here this long, there's got to be some kind of wisdom to it. So then how can I look at it not literally and read it and then just ponder on it and then go through life and look at it as like, okay, as in psychological thinking, what can I store up in myself that no one could steal, or I'd have to give it away? Someone makes me mad.
Yeah.
Well, they can't, they don't have that power unless I give them that power. And then my energy changed based on what they present.
Yeah, and how we perceived it and the place we gave it in our life. Yeah.
And so it goes into controlling energies. Yeah. And when we can transmute energy, so it's okay to get mad. Somebody makes me mad. We'll just say it like that. Well, I can take that information and see what triggers me and realize, oh, this is what I get to learn. How not to get mad at that. Yeah. Whether it's what they did or did not do that triggered me, emotion, and then that emotion motivated my thought of I need to do X, Y, or Z. Well, that's the decision or choice. It's like, well, I could retaliate or I could not, or I could learn from this and then not let the next experience or event trigger me into being mad. It's like a horse. Each event that we go through, I look at it as a learning opportunity. Whenever I get a brand new horse that I'm training for someone, and I've got to put the first ride on them, and then I got to take them out, and then I got to expose them to events, and they get off center, they get fear, they get scared. Well, then that's an opportunity for me to present to them to not be. And then, what triggered their emotion and motivated their thoughts to run, whatever it is. Then I get an opportunity to create the horse that I want and character that I want, to where the next event has little to no effect. The horse is aware of the trash truck, but I've already communicated to him that we can program and condition you, so to speak, into thinking unrestricted, and the body response, no tension. The heart rate maintains, the breathing maintains in rhythm and vibrational frequency. And then we have a feedback loop to where outside influences have little to no effect.
Creates a different reality.
On our, yes. And that we can do that for ourselves away from the horse to manifest the reality we want. So I came up with a new phrase.
Yeah, let's hear
it. Actually, you've heard it before, but I added something to it. So where attention goes, energy flows, but reality grows. That's the way it works.
Yeah, I like it.
If we're focusing on what we don't want, we'll get it. If your horse is steering to the left and you're like, don't go to the left, you're going to get going to the left.
Don't be scared.
But if you change your thoughts to your horse is going to the left, I'd like to ask you to go to the right. You focused on what you wanted, not on what you didn't want. And you got what you wanted. And people that have horses get to see this so fast and cause an effect, where they can do it away from the horse in real life. Like, I don't want to focus on being poor.
Right.
I focus on being wealthy, and it's for health. I don't want to focus on being unhealthy. I don't want to focus on what I don't want to eat. I want to focus on what I want to eat.
We shouldn't. We do a lot. We definitely focus on the negatives, on the things we're worried about or we don't want to come to pass and change.
It's a distraction. When a horse, I'm asking him a question and he kicks out at me. This has been years, I go to different places, but I would be aware of the horse kicking out at me. But I'm focusing on how well he's moving in the direction I asked him. And another person that's not at the level, they're like, oh, I would have gave up. I would have been scared. I would have stopped. They're giving me their feedback of what they just saw happen. And I was like, yeah, but I don't focus on what I don't want. I focus on what I do want. And the stuff I don't want falls away. It's just that formula. That's how it works. Horses are the same way. They don't sit and dwell on what they don't want. They focus on what they do want. And then we can learn from that and harmonize with it, agree with it. And then that's just the way it works. I mean, I've kind of gotten to this habit of saying it's just that simple.
Yeah. I know you say that all the time. It's so simple. I'm like, in words, it's simple. When you're like through that. But for some people, it's like it's calculus. It's so simple, but it's like I'm still trying to figure out addition and subtraction down here. So, but yeah, lots of really cool possibilities. yeah, I think that's a good note to wrap up on, mostly because I have to go get my kids really soon. But
Okay, well, if anybody wants information on that Tropical
yeah,
Island Adventure
yeah,
Clinic,
yeah. Do a
go to
plug
my
for that. Where
website,
should they find it?
Justin Dunn horsemanship.com
Mm-hmm.
or AmericanMustangSchool.com. And I set up a page in my website. It's Tropical Horsemanship Adventure Clinic. Gives information. And then on this, if you're watching on this podcast, if you go to that page and you have questions, let
Yeah,
me know. Shoot me an email.
yeah,
Be happy to answer.
yeah. Sounds like it's going to be incredible. 3 days on an island with horses. That's pretty hard to beat.
Well, the caliber of people that are already coming to that and that are already there. When you surround yourself with those type individuals, you start vibrating at their frequency, and that's a beautiful thing. So it's like you want to start thinking in a way. You're going to start attracting different people.
Yeah,
You start thinking higher, you're going to attract higher. You start thinking in a way for your horse, you're going to start attracting that for your horse. Because remember, you attract what you become. That's
yeah.
you know, I've sat in meetings with high caliber people, and I literally look inward and go, man, how did I get here with all you guys? And I think that, and then it's comforting to know it's like, well, because I became this, and it's just that simple.
It's true, whether we like it or not. We can learn about ourselves not just by how the horses react, but also by our surroundings and what we've created in our life. Definitely some clues for us to hone in on to figure out where maybe we can focus on to create the life that we really want. So yeah.
Well, I hope you took good notes so we can have more podcasts. Yeah. At least I enjoy doing these.
Yeah,
these are fun.
Let's do it. Almost any time. Like anytime between all the other things that we're doing. But yeah, it's always good to get together and chat about horses and all the lessons that they teach.
Life.
Yeah. And life, right? Because ultimately that's definitely the piece that they touch on is changing our lives.
Man, I figured I got to figure out the game of life. I figured that out. And I might as well have horses to help me do it.
They're pretty awesome
it's
to have,
just, it's a win-win. So it just makes it all that better.
Especially Mustangs. Yep, there's something else.
All right. Well, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming again.
Thank you for joining us and learning about horses that heal and the humans who help them. We hope you'll continue with us on this journey. We'd love for you to subscribe on your favorite platform and follow The Touch of a Mustang on any of the major social media outlets. Please share with your friends, anyone who loves horses, or anyone who might be struggling and could benefit from this message. If you have felt the healing power of horses or help them in their divinely appointed mission, please reach out. We want to hear your story. As we say goodbye, always remember that the horse is always there to help you heal.